All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the AI Math Guy podcast, where we reimagine education in the age of AI. And I'm your host of the podcast, Jay. And today we have an incredible and amazing guest, Dr. Beth Fisher. She has been in education with a lot of experience and wisdom, and we maybe I can let her introduce herself a little bit. And just very excited to have her on the show. Welcome, Dr. Beth Fisher. Go ahead and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what you do right now, your role as well. And yeah, go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Since I'm representing myself and not an organization, I'll just say overall, I've had 18 years of experience in the field, and I have had the great privilege of being a teacher. I can say now that I still am a teacher, even if I'm an administrator, and I've served secondary mostly, a little bit with elementary, was a high school vice principal, middle school principal, and now I'm back in the high school world doing some directorshipness, but it is in a small charter. So if you do work in a charter world, you know that you have many roles and many hats to play. So, and it's all for the greater good and purpose of serving kids. So it's completely worth it. And I wouldn't trade the charter world for anything. You get to do some really cool things. And I did have the opportunity to start a charter school as well. But yeah, just very passionate about learning and inclusion and equity and access, and very, very interested in how AI is going to help meet some of those needs and fill some of those gaps.
Awesome. Yeah, I think being able to hold so many different positions from teacher to principal to director, then to teacher, and to start charter schools. I'm sure being able to be in different levels or perspectives of education gives you insights, I feel, that are very unique. So, for yourself right now, I mean, having gone through all of these positions, what are some things that you've learned about education just in general that you feel like are really insightful and really just important to you as an educator up to this point and with
I th-
18 years of experience?
Conceptually, I think in my doctoral program, one of my favorite professors, shout out to Dr. Cheryl James Ward, she really impressed upon us the system is designed to achieve the results it gets. And so when you're talking about equity and access, if you really go into the history of American public schools, that's my context. I can't really speak outside of the United States, but if you look at the history and how schools were formed in the United States, I don't think any of us should be surprised that the American public schools have a hard time with innovation and change.
Yes, I totally see what you're saying about the educational history, which I myself have done a little bit of research, not too in depthly. And I actually reached out to some educational historians, some in some other universities. They never got back to me because he was like, who is this guy? But I really am so interested because you're right. I think the reason why we may potentially face some challenges when it comes to innovation. It might come back to the root. So, would you be willing to share a little bit about our educational history? Just maybe highlight some points that really may lead to some of the inequity that you might be talking about.
Yeah, so one of the best books I read in my doctoral program was David B. Tyek's, sorry, One Best System. So essentially what he does is he details the foundations of American public schools, and we in the United States, really industrialization is what propelled American public schools, right? So when you look at that factory model, this is where you start classifying and categorizing human beings into more like entities. So a lot of more recent language would be like prioritizing product over people. And I
Mm.
actually think that the one best system schooling model, its antithesis is AI. So it'll be so interesting to see, like, what's that bridge, you know? Like, because even if I right now work in like non-traditional space, right? but even in non-traditional spaces, American public schools have age grade placement, right? And we talk a lot about mastery-based learning. So I'm not commenting on my particular school. I'm talking about schools in general, right? Even in a very forward-thinking organization like the one I'm in, there are systems and structures that are imposed upon places that want to innovate, such as age grade placement. If you have a kid who is has fallen behind, right? Behind according to the standards, or if you have a kid who is ahead according to the standards, what do you do for them? If they are placed in 10th grade, there are 10th grade standards that you have to hit. That's like a simple example of like a systems design.
Interesting. So this industrialization and this classifying of kids. So I was talking to AI about this, and maybe you can correct me if I'm incorrect, Beth, here, is that the engineers for Forbes, is Forbes? Ford, not Forbes. Ford went and looked at a meat packing plant, and they were seeing how they were breaking apart and cutting apart different pieces of meat, and they're like, man, this is so efficient. That is how. And then the meat at the end of it would come out, and it would have a grade. It would have an A, B, C, D, F grade meat, quality of meat. And that's the reason why the engineers will look at that and they're like, wow, that was like very efficient. And so we're going to model our factory, which is the Ford car factory. And then there's a guy, I forgot what his name was, went and saw the factory model, was like, wow, that is very efficient. We have an incoming or influx of so many immigrants, we don't know what to do with them. So we need a very efficient system to handle all these guys, and therefore we're gonna then follow the factory model. Is that kind of the right idea?
Heard that specifically, but if you look at David Tayek's details of history, like you're looking at like we talk about class sizes being large in the upper 30s. You're talking about like hundreds of kids in a room. So of course there
Mm,
has to be efficiency. Nobody's going to learn with a couple hundred kids in a room. So
yeah.
yeah, I think based on what I read, I hadn't heard that, but I'll go dive deep into that as the
Mm,
history nerd that I am.
mm,
I would believe it to be true.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I just got it from AI, so correct me if I'm wrong. It's just things that I am researching. Should have checked the sources on that. And you're right. I think in terms of different systems that you see, like for example, age grade, and you're saying now the AI is antithesis of that. So could you tell me a little bit more about like the systems that we have to follow that are imposed upon us that you feel could change or could be improved? So like the age grade, and if so, I have an idea why, but in your opinion, why specifically age grade? And what are some other ones that you see is, oh, I wonder what it would look like for us to reimagine that space or the things that are being imposed?
I do think, especially in California, I think California tries to be very forward thinking. So I think legislatively, they put things in place like alternative diploma pathways. I think that we're still deeply rooted in like the industrialization piece of it. So it's like in the United States of America, it's either like college pathway or career pathway, right?
Mm,
And I'm happy to see CTE programs destigmatize if a kid does or doesn't go to college, because I think for a period of time, like I grew up in the 90s and it very much felt like college or nothing, right? So I think that the way AI is going to change industry is going to have to change the way that we do learning. So if you're looking at big structures like that,
mm.
I also think, and we had a conversation with this before the podcast, but I also think we need to talk about how it's going to change math education. Because
Exactly.
for somebody like me who leads intervention support, I'm not a credentialed math teacher, but I
Mm,
have to have an understanding of intervention support. I am more efficient at math support than I've ever been in my entire life, and I do not
mm.
have a schema for math.
Wow.
I
Yes.
don't.
Yeah. Let's jump into that. I would love to talk more about like the college and the CTE because I also have my thoughts around that. And I would love to hear more about how AI has helped you with math intervention, instructing math, and maybe also give us a little bit of background with your role right now because you're like a director, but also a teacher who needs to teach all subjects. My
Yeah.
understanding is. So tell us a little
Like,
bit about your role and then,
oversee it. So yeah,
yeah.
my formal title is Director of Academic Accountability, but this is what I respect about my organization is as needs arise, the students' needs, that's the priority. That's you have to address student needs. So you're fairly familiar with this because you work at a virtual school. This is very similar. We have an independent study program. So one of the things that I oversee is that independent study program. And I'm a credentialed English teacher. And actually, I think every administrator that I work with teaches a class, some kind of class. So there's like a
Mm,
relevance in making sure that your boots on the ground. So I think big criticism of administrators is often like you kind of go to the ivory tower, right? And like you don't
yeah.
really you lose kind of touch with the day to day. I
Yeah.
can say with confidence that the team that I work with does not lose touch with the day to day, and there are job responsibilities related to instruction that every member of our administrative team has to take part in. So I
Wow.
think that's really cool that that's the norm, not that I'm going to sit here and oversee. It's literally I'm going to like roll my sleeves up and get into it. So
Yeah.
we do have, and I'm in the office by myself right now, but so you'll see the lights go on and off. So
No,
sorry
all
for
good.
that.
It is all good.
But I think the biggest thing is when you look at where we are in the United States of America, it's not just my school. Math and language arts scores in a post-pandemic world. We're talking about scores, right? And even that system in and of itself has so many gross inequities, right? But test scores are how we are measured and given value as schools, right? The dashboard. So initially in the beginning of the school year, I started out overseeing kind of the whole of it. Now I have a little bit of a niche looking at some of our students who have some of the highest needs and being able to provide them some kind of alternative education setting, whether they're fully learning remotely in an independent study format, or if they're doing like what's called drop-in learning, where they can still take that platform and flexibility that comes with the independent study program, but then get core instruction from people like myself. We have a math teacher who supports, we have a science teacher who supports, we have a history teacher who supports. So it's that independent study model where the credentialed teachers come in for drop-in hours, but at the end of the day, I oversee the whole program and take responsibility for everything. And I
So
love
it's
being called English teacher. I love it.
that's awesome. So it's an independent study program, and so students do their work independently, and if they so chose, they can come and meet with teachers at during the office hours.
Yes. And
Perfect.
we don't restrict them from coming and getting help, which is also
Sure.
very fun.
Awesome. All right. Then tell us more about how. So you also then with overseeing this program with independent studies, you also, like you said, are boots on the ground and doing like instructing and teaching. How has that been? I know you teach multiple subjects, correct? All at the
Well,
same.
technically, it's that support piece of it.
Sure.
So when a student, like, if
Wow.
it's drop hours, if it's drop and the math teacher is not there and they need help
Okay.
with math, here I am.
Sure. Sure.
Hi. And then I will obviously say, like, your math teacher is coming at this time. Please make sure you're available and hear that
Sure.
out. But
Okay.
I don't want to misrepresent that because I'm not a credentialed math teacher. Zach, your counterpart, the COO, I think I'm saying that right? The
Yeah.
COO, he's actually coming in weekly to work with the kids.
Mm.
So what I'll tell you is we are going to have a lot of norm setting to do with kids with AI. And then
Mm.
moving beyond norm setting to like value. So today was the first day utilizing kind of AI in general, where kids were like, "Oh." And I have been going at AI with them for 8 weeks, like 8 persistent weeks of here's how you use a tool for thinking, not for productivity. Like we're not trying to get to the end game. So it kind of leads me to the next concept of like the game of schooling. So when it comes to grading and achievement markers and things like that, we have conditioned kids to say, how much is this worth? How fast can I get there? I need to get it done. as opposed to, hey, I'm being given some task, problem, some meat, and how do I actually chew on that meat? They're literally just like consuming it. I'll spit it right back out to you. Just tell me where to spit.
Sure. Yeah, that's very
So
interesting. Yeah.
I think that we're still wrestling, if I'm gonna be honest. I think the product itself is the best. So, can I tell a story about your I think your COO won't mind me sharing
Yeah, no,
this.
go for it. Absolutely.
Okay, most independent study programs, and I'm not gonna say the names, but most independent study programs throw kids on pre-made platforms. And so what ends up happening in those kinds of programs is kids then go on to what their favorite AI chatbot or even Snapchat. This is the one that's just like, I'm so old, okay? I'm just like,
Wow.
you are
Wha-
using Snapchat AI to get answers for your biology class online? Do you
That's
even
crazy.
know what you're doing? Like, do you even know what you're doing? And then they're like, "No, miss, I don't have to know what I'm doing. I just have to pass the class."
Yeah.
So that was one of my like non-negotiables in this particular program is like, I don't want a platform that kids can use with AI. That being said, when you take all of work with the teachers, right? Take all their curriculum, try to put it in a way that's comprehensible for an independent study program. If anybody runs an independent study program, it's like not that simple just to be like, here,
Sure.
learn, right?
Yeah.
So over the winter break, I went into a deep rabbit hole. So like now I know how to do my own custom GPTs. Like if I wanted to spend money, I could do the, I think it's called a UI. Like I'm still learning these things. Like I have enough knowledge to be like super dangerous, right? In the world. So I was texting Zach and Zach told me, he was like, "Man, I'm like low-key offended. We built you this great tool. Like, are you trying to do something different?" Like, and I had never intended to use it for math
Sure.
because here's the blunt truth. AI has its limitations with math. So, like, your platform is absolutely that I like stress tested so much AI, and I
Mm.
was getting so frustrated with its like hallucinations and its breakdowns. And at one point in the chat with AI, it said, I like cussed at it, right? And I had never done that before. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm getting like emotionally invested in this. This is absolutely ridiculous. And then the AI responds with, like, I can see that you're frustrated. It's not your fault. You're bringing doctoral level work to the AI space, and we're just not there yet, but we
Mm.
will get there. I
Mm.
think what people need to like know is like there's so much use of AI for like productivity and
Mm.
not creation aspects of it.
Mm.
But when it comes to the creation aspects of it, either I have a conspiracy theory that the rich people are holding it back for their own gain,
Mm. Sure.
or or AI really is not there yet.
So as you were playing around with the custom GPTs, it was very frustrating because you would tell it, "Hey, do this," and it just would not behave the way that you want it to.
I
Correct?
liken it like okay, so I'm a mom, right? I have kids. They are almost 8 and 10. I liken AI and it's like true infancy stages, but I think they're more like toddlers, right? So it's developed language, right? And so you think like as a parent, "Oh, my kid has an understanding of what they're saying." They don't have an understanding of what you're saying. They only have an understanding of what's been input.
Exactly.
So it's like it's just so interesting because
Mm.
you need to have and when I said I don't have a math schema, like I was the student athlete in high school and I went to an underperforming high school where like I got passed. Like it was not I did not learn math. I did not
Sure.
learn math.
Sure.
So do I sit there and say like, "Oh, that kind of sounds familiar to me because I was sitting in a classroom 25, 30 years ago?" Like,
Mm.
sure.
Mm.
So, but I do find myself asking AI all the time, that doesn't sound mathematically sound. Can you check your thinking again? So I think the hard part is like when people say like AI is going to kill critical thinking, it's only going to kill critical thinking if you let it, if you just like blindly accept things. But then I challenge that notion because when I look at policy and when I look at what's happening around the United States of America, and I mean, that's not just like recently, like look at the last decade in the United States of America, you have to seriously question the level to which people can think critically and civically. And that's not an AI
Exactly.
issue. That's not an
Yeah,
AI.
for sure. So,
Yeah.
just your experience with AI has been that it is still very imperfect, and it still needs a lot of human judgment, human arbitration in order to make sure that the outputs are true and true.
So where the gap is for me right now, which I think other educators need to know, is not the tool itself, it's how students are accustomed to using a tool. So like
Mm,
right now, the kids don't love that you actually have to like read and engage with it. They want a quick answer. So
mm,
we are in the phase right now with So Meta of persistence building. So like literally today, after 8 weeks of like, here's how you use AI as a thinking tool,
mm,
a productivity secretary.
mm,
Today was the first day kids were like, I kind of get what you're saying right now. Now
mm.
moving that into like ongoing action is going to take like repetition. And so I think the biggest thing that people need to know is there's not a better tool out there for what I'm intending to use it for, which is diagnosing and deploying.
Sure. So tell me a little bit more about some of the skills that students and you're hoping to impart into your students, which is, for example, perseverance. And when they're talking with AI, I'm assuming they just want their answer right away so they can get it done with. And that's also has a philosophical framework of let's just get to the answer fast as possible. Let's just get it done. That kind of framework there. And in your opinion, what are some skills that you think that students need to know in order to use AI ethically, correctly, and in the right way?
I think what it comes down to is like, since your podcast is about reframing education, reframing within the system restrictions that we have.
Mm,
So I go back to I was geeking out over your Tupac math example, like just geeking out over that. And you can explain that, to set
sure.
the context. But it caused me as an educator to think, and we're starting to make some shifts in this within our program of how do you pose a meaningful task? Because AI can help you engage in meaningful tasks, not just end game productivity, right?
Mm,
So, how do I pose a meaningful task? And then how do I look at this from a multidisciplinary approach,
mm,
including math? And how do I get the students to see real world math as it is applicable to their life? Because
mm,
really, the reality is, I could go into any chat engine and say, here are the standards that are going to be assessed on CASP. Here is the adjusted blueprint. Please now backwards map every mathematical rule that I need to know. And then it will, within 45 seconds, list for me every mathematical rule that I need to know.
mm,
Why do I need to know the rule?
mm,
Now, we're not there yet because this test says you need to know the rule. If we're asking the question right now, and a big essential question for like, we're doing more like portfolio based learning. So you have to like defend your learning from a historical, mathematical, English, and scientific lens. And so they look at that from all of those lenses. So if we're posing the question, growth at what cost? So is growth good at what cost? Like, is growth
mm,
always good
mm,
or not? All right. And if you're looking at charts on population size, if you're looking at the data on how like they are analyzing the chart that with population growth requires more food, like that's nothing but linear and exponential math, right? Equations. But am I sitting there and being like, y is equal to mx plus b. Now let's go ahead and create a chart and let's see. We're going to plot point 1 and then we're going to plot point 2, right? So like when we talk about reimagining education in the world outside of school, there is no way we're drawing a chart and plotting points in that manner. We are actually building whatever it is we're trying to plot. So it's like, how do you give skills to kids to be the person that creates the outcomes of that chart,
Mm,
not a chart that your teacher wants to complete compliantly in that moment. Does that make
sure.
sense?
So it's like being able to connect data and math and history and English, all the subjects all together to solve some problem that is pressing for humanity to answer or to solve at the moment. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
And even
So,
in their workflow, I think about taking our kids. I like am obsessed with Garner Holt education, right? So one of their machinists told the kids, I do algebra every day. I need to know the X chart and the Y chart because if I don't know where I'm plotting things, then whatever I'm producing on a machine will be messed up. So still a value in understanding algebra, but what are you actually creating in a meaningful way?
so that table that students are creating isn't just, hey, it's some chart that is X, Y, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, whatever. And it's just some isolated thing that the students have to study and extract and analyze. And when that is applied to, for example, like this professional using it in his daily life or his work, it definitely brings that meaning for the kids. I see. So that's like what you have been thinking about AI, this creativity side and helping students to create. Maybe would you be able to speak on some of the things that you guys are working on right now? I know how things grow at what cost. That's one of the things that you guys are talking about and studying. What are some other real world questions that you guys are answering in your
So this is the first time we're really wrestling with that. They're also side to that, they're working on like personal portfolios. So, like, truth be told, everybody wants to make money, right? So it's even like the stock market is not a part of integrated math 1, 2, or 3 standards.
Mm.
But being able to then say to the kids, hey, if we're looking at right now, we're like really heavy in like exponential functions. So like,
I love
but
exponential functions.
notice how, like, I even now look at this. I am not a math person, okay? I love math people and I'm embracing an open mindset, right? I'm gonna have a growth mindset. But the fact that we are looking at these real world ideas, like the kids are looking at how do I is it better for me right now at my age to save money, right? So linear function, or is it better for me to invest in a high yield savings account with this amount of money? So I think that's like when I look at another like example of like questions we're wrestling with and how you bring meaning to math, we're still hitting those standards. It's just naming it in a way that is relevant for them. And then, but I will tell you, because I'll end up putting the rule, like, here's the rule, here's the equation, all that kind of stuff. And they're just like, then they go like, why do we have to know the rule? AI is telling us the rule.
Absolutely. So, do you have the kids talk to AI about what a high yield savings account is or what just a linear function is? Do you have the kids just talk to AI about it or do you have a video, then talk to AI about it? How does the AI come into that flow of students connecting math to, for example, comparison between a savings and a high yield savings account?
Yeah, so mostly I'm using it, and then what I end up doing is in their conferencing, because they still don't like they do. I think people need to like not lose the core structural things in education that work. So
Mm.
one of the core structural things in education that works for learning is the gradual release of responsibility model. We make the assumption that because young people are intuitive with technology, that they just know how to use AI. They don't. So, like today was a day when we were doing individual portfolio conferencing. And so I literally sat down with the student and was like, here, I am going to teach you how to prompt this. Because if you just say, give me the answer, the product you're going to get is going to be not good. So let's look at the difference. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what it was because It's like a personal example for their learning, and I don't want to like out a child, you know?
Yeah.
But then they're like, "Miss, that was incredible." And I'm like, "This is what I'm trying to get you to, is you have to think, how am I going to get this tool that doesn't think independently for itself? It's literally just regurgitating back what you want it to. And it
Mhm.
gets to know your personality, like, sure, but it's just mimicking you at this point. So how do you take that? How do you take this huge database and then leverage it for what you want for a better output?"
So for you,
So I'd
it's
not independent. Right now, they are in a guided learning phase of using AI, at least in the way I want them to for creation. I can't say with confidence that I can release them to create. I can release them to get an end product, but then if we use the language on chat and off chat. So if I send them a custom GPT, or if I put them on Someta, that's on chat. But if I take them off chat and say, "Why did you do what you just did?" They're to a point
mm,
where like, "Miss, because you told me to use AI." And I just asked it a few questions, but I didn't want to persist through reading it.
very interesting. Yeah, I think what you're sharing is the idea of gradual release. Like some kids just aren't ready, and I think that's very important because, like you were sharing, many people, teachers and educators might think that just because a child is tech or savvy with technology means that they somehow know how to use AI properly, and that's not necessarily the case. And so, really, just guiding them through that conversation, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
maybe
We have
not, yeah, and maybe not talking about specifically what the portfolio said. What were some of the questions that you asked your student, or what are some of the things that you showed your student to
Yeah.
help them create?
We talked about how do you use AI as a critical friend. So I think that's the best way to say it. So they were creating something today, and they knew it wasn't good. Like they were like, which I think to be in a vulnerable space of like, I'm creating a prototype right now, and I know that this is not good. I know if I submitted this right now, this I would not be judged well. People would think that I'm not competent. Like the kids said it in much different ways, right? But it was really fun for them to be like, "Are you serious? You are going to make me do this right now?" And they want to, like they chose it, right? So then I said, "Okay, during conferencing, I think it's best if I show you how do you take what you just did and you're about to have something completely refined." And what I found very interesting, because AI is different. It acts differently all the time depending on how you prompt it, right? When I use AI, my AI algorithm, whatever you call it, it knows me pretty well. So it doesn't typically give me options like, "Hey, you might want this if you want this outcome. You might want this if you want this outcome." So it was really fun because I said to the kids, during your individual conferencing time, I want you to tell AI exactly where you feel insecure in the product that you're trying to create. And they're like,
Mm.
"What?" And I'm like, "No, you need to tell it. My fears are." You either say my fears are or my concern with this product is. What I'm trying to achieve in the creation is this. Please take a look at what I just developed and tell me what I need to do. So, what it did was it didn't give them necessarily the answer. It said, "Here's what you're doing well, here's where you need to improve, and here are three options that you could look at and evaluate to see if you want to provide improvement." So, it was fun to watch the kids then evaluate and say, "You know what, this one is actually most accurate to what I'm trying to create."
Wow. So it's almost giving them sentence starters for them to fill in, like, I'm most insecure about, and this is what I want to achieve. And I think that's very interesting and very curious. Why did you specifically ask them, what are you insecure about? And why that to be the sentence starter for them to put into AI?
Well, the first thing I told them is, "You're sitting in discomfort and you need to know that's okay. You
Mm,
can push past it. Your product, where it's at right now, is natural in the developmental stages. So now you need to be able to get the validation." And AI did that. right? It validated you are where you need to be in this process. To get to the next step, you need to do this. Oh, and by the way, here are the gaps that I'm seeing in what you're doing. Now, they could very easily like reject the feedback and say, no, I'm going to stick with this. But it's really teaching them, how am I going to sit in the discomfort, right? And then how do I build upon success? A big thing at our workplace right now is success breeds success. So if they can remove the barrier of where they think they are failing, they're likely to take more academic risks.
So for the AI to affirm where they're at and then to show them some gaps where they can fill and be able to move forward.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So I think in terms of the conversation with AI, maybe just one last question, which is where do you see AI being in 5 years in its place and role in education?
That will depend on if our legislators and our systems are willing to make some changes.
So very policy focused, or
Mhm.
it's very
Yeah,
dependent on that. Okay. And
100%. Yeah.
what are some like legislative things that you would want to see in terms of AI?
Looking at how we look at standards. I mean, if you're the AI math guy, do
Sure.
we really need to know all the rules of math? Do
That is
we?
true.
If you have an engine that does it for you, do you need to know those rules? Or
Mm,
do we need to teach kids how to access those rules to create things?
absolutely.
And then
All right.
it goes back to that whole power structure. I mean, I think everything comes down to power structure. Do we actually want to empower young people to create?
That's
Or
good.
because Galileo, a historical figure who no longer lives in our world but governs it, all the historical mathematicians who govern our world, do we value tradition over entering into the modern space we are? Or do you have to be somebody who is positioned well to sit at a table to make those decisions and you have to do the game of school to get there? I mean, I think those are the questions that policymakers need to ask.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. And I think, yeah, one of the things that I want to continue to learn more about is policy and how that affects education. And we don't have to go into this. And I wanted to give you a little bit of space and totally okay if you don't want to go here to share a little bit about maybe something that you went through today. And if you don't want to, that's completely okay. And wanted to give you a little bit of space because there might be others in education who might be going through a similar thing or something, maybe yeah, some similar things than you've experienced. So do you want to talk about that? And
No, I appreciate the opportunity to hold space and even just to recognize. So I came into the podcast a little bit puffy. I'm a pretty tough person. I'm not overly emotional. But 3 years ago, I lost a very dear friend and a counselor that I had worked with. And so coming upon the anniversary of her passing, and especially she embodies disruptor. And I say embodies because she's still very much lives through me. She lives through other people, but her name is Stacy Calloway, and we're coming up on the anniversary of her passing right now. It's been 3 years, and I find the world is just so fascinating, that the world that she left to where it is now, when we talk about the human in the loop, just how invaluable that connection and experience is, and I wouldn't have had it without education. So, yes, I came into the podcast a little bit puffy and a little bit downtrodden because I miss her, and grief is something hard to bear. But I also know that she is very much a motivator in what I do in my work and bringing so much to kids. And that's such a loaded statement. If you are ever offline with me or anything, like, you can know the stories that I'm telling, like in the depth of like souls, right? The soul work. She is a person who did soul work. So definitely want to give her a shout out for sure. Thank you for letting me hold that space.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, she seems like a really incredible person and somebody who embodies disrupting. And I know you're a disruptor. So I can see that disruptive heart and I don't know, will really flow through you. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. As we close out the podcast, what is just your one word of encouragement and hope for anybody who is listening out there?
You said one word?
And then it could be, it doesn't have to be one word, but maybe like a sentence or, yeah, this is your opportunity to encourage and give hope to our
Okay.
listeners.
I'm gonna go with quoting Zombies 4. I'm a mom, okay? And this is I don't remember the female character, Zed. I like Zed a lot. He's a zombie. They do a song. Impossible is possible.
That's awesome. Do you want to expound on that or do you just want to leave
Yeah.
it?
I think like that can make meaning for anybody. I think the biggest thing is when it comes to disrupting, when it comes to learning, when it comes to human beings. If you look at the ills and errors of American public schooling and their structures, a lot of it comes down to putting people, standards, and learning in a box. And so oftentimes we can like unintentionally create spaces that are not welcoming or belonging or encourage academic risk taking within our field. So sometimes the work can feel impossible. Sometimes when students are standing in gaps in learning, sometimes when students are overwhelmed with trauma and stressors. I mean, you name all the things that American public schools are facing in like the flesh part of it, like just how hard it is to teach anymore these days. Sometimes it feels really impossible. And I was having dinner with my college roommate who made a lot of money not doing education, but was a teacher at one point. And we were having this discussion about her going back into teaching. And she asked me my honest opinion. And I said, I don't think it's for you. You've already tasted like the good life of making money. Are you ready to go and make $60,000 a year to deal with like a sea of humanity? And she paused and was like, oh my gosh, like teachers do not make, I forgot how little teachers make. So I think at the end of the day, and actually I loathe like wicked loathing, unadulterated loathing. I loathe when people are like, remember your why. Because I
Mhm.
think like we are all in this field because we feel that there is something that we can give to other humans. And so you do not get a dollar value. Like you do not walk away making money in education. But that notion that I can be a part of something. I can be a part of someone's life where something at one point was impossible and now it's possible for them.
That's awesome. Yeah, there might not be a lot of money for teachers here, and being able to help students and teachers to experience the impossible and showing them, hey, you can do it. It is possible. I think that's a very powerful way to end the episode. So thank you so much, Dr. Beth Fisher, for your time, and really appreciate all that you do and the light that you are to your community, to your school, and to your students. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for everybody who's listening. And that is another episode of the AI Math Guy podcast. I'll see you guys in the next episode.